You're standing in the TV aisle right now, aren't you? Or maybe you've got 15 browser tabs open, each one screaming a different opinion about which TV technology is actually worth your money. LED, QLED, OLED. 3 letters that somehow determine whether you're about to have the best viewing experience of your life, or spend the next 5 years squinting at a screen that looked amazing in the store, but terrible in your living room. Here's what nobody's telling you. One of these technologies is living on borrowed time, another is a brilliant marketing trick that actually works, and the third, well, it's about to make you question every TV purchase you've ever made. I've tested all 3 side by side in conditions that actually matter, not showroom lighting designed to make everything look good, and what I discovered is going to save some of you thousands of dollars while making others realize you've been watching TV wrong this entire time. Let's start with what you think you know. LED TVs are the budget option, right? QLED is Samsung's fancy upgrade, and OLED is the premium choice for people with too much money. Wrong. That's exactly what the TV industry wants you to believe, because the truth is way more complicated and way more interesting. Here's the reality. The best technology for you has nothing to do with which one costs more and everything to do with one question nobody asks. What does your living room actually look like at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday? Because that's when you're watching TV, not in a perfectly darkened home theater with blackout curtains and controlled lighting. Real life has windows, lamps, and that weird glare from your neighbor's porch light that somehow reflects directly onto your screen, no matter where you put the TV. I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound crazy. I watched the same movie on all 3 technologies, in the same room, same time of day, same streaming quality. The cheapest option won 2 out of 3 scenarios. The most expensive option actually looked worse in one critical situation, and the middle option, the one everyone dismisses as marketing hype, delivered something I didn't expect. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's break down what these technologies actually are, and I promise, no engineering degree required. LED TVs, the ones you've probably owned for the last decade, work like this. There's a big bright panel behind your screen, kind of like a massive flashlight, and it shines through a layer of liquid crystals that twist and turn to create colors and images. Think of it like a sophisticated version of those overhead projectors your teacher used in school. The backlight is always on, always glowing, which means when you want pure black, you're really getting dark gray because that light is still bleeding through. It's why when you watch a movie with black bars at the top and bottom, those bars look more like charcoal than actual black. LED technology has been around forever in TV terms, which means it's cheap to manufacture, reliable, and you can find a decent LED TV for the price of a nice dinner for 2. But here's what they don't tell you. Not all LED TVs are created equal. Some use edge lighting, where LEDs line the sides of the screen, while others use full array lighting with LEDs spread across the entire back panel. The difference is massive, like comparing a dollar store flashlight to a professional photography setup. Now QLED, Samsung's baby, takes that same LED foundation and adds something called quantum dots. Stay with me because this is where it gets interesting. Quantum dots are tiny nanocrystals that sit between the backlight and the screen, and when light hits them, they emit incredibly pure colors. Red looks redder, blue looks bluer, green looks like someone turned up the saturation knob, but in a good way. It's still using that backlight system, so blacks aren't perfect, but the colors are legitimately stunning. Samsung's marketing team loves to pretend QLED is a completely different technology from LED, but really, it's LED with a very clever upgrade. It's like taking a regular car and adding a turbocharger. Same foundation, significantly better performance. The quantum dot layer makes everything brighter and more vibrant, which sounds great until you realize that's not always what you want. Sometimes you want accurate colors, not punchy colors. Sometimes you want the director's vision, not Samsung's interpretation of it. Then there's OLED, the technology that makes people sound like they've joined a cult. Each pixel generates its own light, which means when a pixel needs to be black, it just turns off completely. No backlight bleeding, no gray masquerading as black, just pure infinite darkness. It's why OLED fans talk about the technology like it changed their lives. Watching a movie on a good OLED in a dark room genuinely feels different, like the screen disappears, and you're looking through a window into another world. The contrast is perfect, because you can have a single bright star against a completely black sky, and both look exactly as they should. But here's the uncomfortable truth about OLED that nobody wants to talk about loudly. It's dimmer than LED and QLED, sometimes significantly dimmer. And if you've got a bright living room with windows and natural light, that perfect black level becomes irrelevant because you're fighting glare and reflections the entire time. I tested this exact scenario. Same living room, 3 o'clock on a sunny afternoon, blinds open like a normal person who doesn't live in a cave. The LED TV was bright enough to fight through the glare. The QLED was even brighter, almost aggressive about it. The OLED looked washed out, reflective, and honestly frustrating. But then I waited until 9 p.m., turned off all the lights, and watched the same scene again. The OLED made the other two look like cheap imitations. The LED's blacks looked gray and lifeless. The QLED's colors, while vibrant, seemed artificially pumped up next to the OLED's natural accuracy. It was like comparing a photograph to reality. Both show you the same thing, but one just feels more real. Here's where people make their biggest mistake. They walk into a store, see an OLED looking incredible under carefully controlled showroom lighting, and convince themselves that's what it'll look like at home. Then they spend $3,000 and realize their living room isn't a showroom. The windows face west and catch afternoon sun. The ceiling lights create reflections. The ambient brightness makes that perfect OLED contrast almost impossible to appreciate during the hours they actually watch TV. Meanwhile, their friend bought a mid-tier QLED for half the price and is perfectly happy because their TV can actually compete with the lighting in their room. Let's talk brightness numbers, because they matter more than anyone admits. A decent LED TV can hit around 800 to 1000 nits of peak brightness. QLED pushes that to 1500 or even 2000 nits on higher-end models. OLED tops out around 700 to 900 nits, maybe pushing 1000 on the newest panels. What does this mean in actual human terms? It means QLED can get bright enough to make HDR content look genuinely shocking, like the sun is actually in your living room. LED is bright enough for most situations. OLED is bright enough for dark rooms and not much else. If you watch TV primarily at night with lights off, OLED's brightness limitation barely matters. If you watch TV during the day or with ambient lighting, OLED's weakness becomes your daily frustration. But brightness isn't the whole story, because if it were, we'd all just buy the brightest TV and call it done. Color accuracy matters. Motion handling matters. How the TV processes different types of content matters. I watched a nature documentary on all three. The LED showed me beautiful scenery, but colors felt slightly muted, like looking through a screen door. The QLED made everything look like someone cranked the vibrancy slider to 11, which was stunning, but not quite natural. A parrot's feathers looked more colorful than they probably should. The OLED showed me exactly what the camera captured. Nothing added, nothing taken away. Just pure accuracy. For someone who cares about seeing content as intended, OLED won. For someone who wants their TV to impress guests, QLED won. For someone who just wants a nice picture at a good price, LED held its own surprisingly well. Sports are where things get really interesting. Fast motion, bright colors, usually watched during the day or in well-lit rooms. LED handled it fine, kept up with the motion, stayed bright. QLED excelled here, bright enough to fight any lighting. Colors popped. Motion was smooth. OLED struggled, not because of motion handling, which was actually excellent, but because in a bright room during an afternoon game, the screen reflections and lower brightness made it harder to see details. You're paying premium money for premium technology and getting a worse experience than the cheaper option. That's frustrating. Gaming introduces another variable: input lag, response time, refresh rates. OLED has a natural advantage here, because pixels respond instantly. There's no backlight waiting to catch up, no motion blur, just immediate response. Competitive gamers love OLED for this reason. But QLED has caught up significantly, especially higher-end models with gaming features. The response times are fast enough that most people can't tell the difference. LED lags behind, literally, with slower response times and more motion blur, but for casual gaming, it's still perfectly playable. Now the elephant in the room that OLED fans hate discussing: burn-in. Leave a static image on an OLED screen long enough, and it can permanently ghost into the panel. News channels with their constant logos, video games with static HUDs, even streaming service interfaces if you pause too long. Modern OLEDs have protections against this: pixel shifting, logo dimming, screensavers, but the risk exists. LED and QLED don't have this problem at all. You can leave the same image on screen for days, and nothing happens. For someone who watches varied content, burn-in is a non-issue. For someone who watches the same news channel 8 hours a day, or plays the same video game obsessively, It's a legitimate concern that could ruin a $3,000 investment. Lifespan is another factor nobody talks about honestly. LED TVs can last 10 years easily, sometimes longer. QLED, same deal. It's just LED with extra steps. OLED panels degrade over time, slowly getting dimmer, with estimates suggesting 50,000 to 100,000 hours before noticeable degradation. That sounds like a lot until you do the math. If you watch 5 hours a day, that's potentially only 10 to 20 years, which is still plenty, but it's a finite lifespan, while LED and QLED essentially last until something else breaks first. Here's the part where I tell you which technology actually wins, and the answer is going to frustrate people looking for a simple answer. There is no universal winner. OLED wins for darkroom viewing, movie enthusiasts, and people who prioritize perfect image quality over everything else. If you have a dedicated home theater, if you watch primarily at night, if you care about seeing exactly what directors intended, OLED is genuinely worth the premium. The experience is that much better. QLED wins for bright rooms, daytime viewing, and people who want impressive, vibrant images that wow everyone who sees them. If your TV faces windows, if you watch during the day, if you want HDR content to feel like it's burning your retinas in the best way, QLED delivers. OLED wins for budget-conscious buyers who want good enough without overthinking it. If you just want a reliable TV that does everything reasonably well without costing a fortune, modern LED TVs are shockingly competent. But here's the twist ending that changes everything. The gap between these technologies is shrinking fast. OLED TVs with mini LED backlighting and local dimming can produce blacks that rival OLED in many scenes. QLED's color accuracy has improved to the point where only trained eyes can spot the difference from OLED in many situations. OLED brightness keeps improving, slowly closing the gap with QLED. In 5 years, we might be having a completely different conversation because the technologies are converging toward each other. The worst OLED is getting better at brightness. The best QLED is getting better at black levels. OLED is getting better at everything. So what should you actually buy? Here's my honest advice based on testing all three in real-world conditions. If you have a bright living room and watch TV during the day, don't even consider OLED no matter how good it looks in the store. You'll hate it at home. Go QLED or high-end LED with good brightness specs. If you have a dark room and watch primarily at night, OLED will change how you experience content, and it's worth saving up for. If you're on a budget, modern LED TVs punch way above their weight class, especially models with full-array backlighting and local dimming. Don't let anyone shame you for buying LED when it genuinely meets your needs. If you're a gamer, OLED's response time is incredible, but QLED's brightness makes HDR gaming stunning, so pick based on whether you game in a dark room or not. If you watch a lot of news or play the same game constantly, avoid OLED's burn-in risk and go QLED or LED. The technology that destroys the others isn't about letters or marketing terms. It's about matching the right screen to your actual viewing environment and habits. An OLED in a bright living room is worse than a good QLED. A budget LED in a dark home theater is worse than OLED. Context is everything, and the TV industry doesn't want you thinking about context because then you might not buy the most expensive option. They want you confused, overwhelmed by specs, and willing to just spend more money to feel safe. But the real winner is understanding what you actually need instead of what sounds most impressive. I tested a 43-inch LED, a 55-inch QLED, and a 65-inch OLED all in the same week, rotating them through different rooms in my house. The LED went in the kitchen, where I watch morning news with sunlight streaming through windows. Perfect. Bright, clear, zero glare issues. The QLED went in my living room, where I watch everything from sports to movies, with a mix of natural and artificial lighting. Absolutely crushed it. The colors made every streaming show look like it was filmed yesterday, and the brightness meant I never had to close the blinds. The OLED went in my bedroom, where I watch late-night movies with all lights off. Transcendent, like discovering TV for the first time. But when I tried them in the wrong rooms, everything fell apart. The OLED in the kitchen looked dim and reflective. The LED in the bedroom looked washed out and gray. The QLED in the bedroom looked oversaturated and unnatural. Now you know the truth about all three technologies, the strengths nobody wants to admit the competition has, and the weaknesses every marketing team tries to hide. You know that OLED's perfect blacks mean nothing in a bright room. You know that QLED's aggressive brightness is exactly what some rooms need. You know that LED isn't just the cheap option, It's the smart option for specific situations. Make your choice based on your life, not their advertisements. And whichever technology you pick will be the one that destroys the others for you. The real question isn't which technology wins on paper. It's which technology wins in your actual living space with your actual lighting and your actual viewing habits. A friend of mine spent $4,000 on an OLED because every review said it was the best, then spent another $600 on blackout curtains because the glare was unbearable. Another friend bought a QLED on sale, mounted it across from a window, and watches sports every weekend without thinking twice about it. Same price after the curtains, completely different experiences. One person fighting their TV, the other just enjoying it. That's the difference between buying based on specs and buying based on reality. The TV that looks best in a store under controlled lighting might be the worst choice for your home. The TV that seems boring in comparison might be exactly what your room needs. Stop chasing perfection and start chasing compatibility, because the perfect TV that doesn't work in your space is worthless, while the good enough TV that actually fits your life is priceless. Walk into that store armed with knowledge about your room, not their marketing, and the decision becomes very obvious clear to you now. That's power.